Welcome to No Longer Conformed, my online preaching and teaching ministry. We're studying the book of Revelation, which I've entitled this study, The Unveiling. In this session, we'll be looking at Revelation chapter 6, verses 5 and 6. Tragic grip of famine. Look at verses 5 and 6 of chapter 6. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat on it had a pair of scales in his hands, and I heard a voice in the midst of the four living creatures say, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." The great tribulation, 3.5 years of peace, the white horse, then wars intensifying, culminating with Armageddon, red horse. Wartime brings food shortage. A black horse, wartime always brings food shortage. A black horse follows the red one. In Zechariah chapter 6 and verse 2, it says, with the first chariot were red horses, with the second chariot black horses. Famine, a time of worldwide starvation. Think of today's images of hunger that you see on TV, in the movies, in the news. Think of the worst that you've ever seen or heard. In Matthew chapter 24, in verse 7, it reads, "For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places." In our verses for this session, it says a quart of wheat for a denarius. This is the minimum amount for a person to survive for an entire day's wages. Get that? A quart of wheat for a denarius. A quart of wheat is the minimum amount for a person to survive. And it costs an entire day's wages. In Matthew 20, verse 2, "Now when he had agreed with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard." Historians indicate that a day's wages would buy 8 quarts of wheat, which is about 8 times inflation. So when this rider goes out, a candy bar costing $1 will suddenly be $8. You got that? A day's wages would buy 8 quarts of wheat. And now, a quart of wheat will cost a denarius. A day's wages. Instead of getting you 8 quarts of wheat, it'll get you only 1 quart. So, an example, a candy bar costing $1 will suddenly cost $8. And then it says a pair of scales. This picture is very careful rationing. Anyone who is old enough to remember or to grow up in that time, World War II, there was rationing that was going on because during war, food becomes scarce. There'll be much hunger, and because of that, there'll be much suffering and there'll be much death. Lamentation, chapter 5, in verse 10, "Our skin is hot as an oven because of the fever of famine." A day's wages for one person's food supply. What about the other members of the family? What about the unemployed? How are we going to eat? How is a family going to survive? The imagery is horrible to even think about. The Holy Spirit's restraining influence will be gone. Listen, people will kill to eat. This happened during the Civil War. The siege on Atlanta. Couldn't get food in because it was surrounded. So the people began killing animals, horses, in order to have food. Notice that last phrase. Don't miss this. Everything that the Holy Spirit inspires to write is important. And do not harm the oil and the wine. That's interesting. Some luxury items will be available, but who can buy them with a day's wages for a quart of wheat? Well, only the very wealthy. Well, how about that? Bringing on an attitude of resentment from the working people or the unemployed toward those who have wealth. The poor are affected, but the governing class, the ruling class, the wealthy will escape it. But don't worry, they're going to get it when the sixth seal is open. You have a great day.